And Schrodinger's getting quite upset, and he's like, "Listen, Albert, it's really easy, right?" And he's like, "I think I've got it. Just go with it one more time. One more time." And he's like, "Okay." So Einstein's listening, and Schrodinger explains it again. And he goes, "So that's it. That's as easy as I can explain it. That's as easy as I can explain it just now. Do you get it?" And he says, "Yeah, I've got it. But show me the cat."
Boom.
Existential quantum comedy. Quantum comedy. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely fantastic.
So it was both funny and not funny at the same time?
Or was it?
Ooh.
Or was it?
Which way you were looking?
It depends what fun is. Welcome everyone. This is the Digital Download with me, Eric from Crux. Do we want to go around and introduce ourselves? I've got Tim at the top left of the screen. Tim?
Hi, I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion today.
We're going to go anti-clockwise just because we're wild and crazy. Rob, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, all. I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results, based just outside of Boston and a proud DLA partner.
Cool. Thank you very much. Linwood?
Hi, I'm Linwood Ross. I'm the founder and CEO of Accelerate. We're a DLA Ignite partner just outside New York City.
Very good. And there's some other bloke at the top right. But moving on, Adam, would you like to say hi?
Yeah, I was going to say, and last, but by all means least, I'm Adam. I'm Tim's business partner and co-founder of DLA Ignite.
Very good indeed. Very good indeed. Can I just say we've got a mystery guest coming? Who's not so much of a mystery because I put it in the post that supports this. No mystery. In fact, there's just a guest coming, right? If the guest is listening to this, just click on the link that I sent in the thing rather than the Zoom call, because I see he's just joined a Zoom call, which is a little bit upsetting. I might ask you guys just to have a little chat, and I might go off screen and just sort some things out. However, can I set the scene? Is that okay?
Yes.
Please.
Sure.
So, what's that?
Are you going to do it on Zoom or are you going to do it on here?
Multi-channeling. So last week I sat down to write an article, and the article was about why should anyone care what you do? In fact, that's what it was called. And it came from a conversation that I was having with my wife about the toughest job in sales that I ever had. Wasn't actually in direct sales. It wasn't in the job of trying to win orders and increase revenue. It was actually in health and safety. The sales job was trying to convince people to behave in another way, sustainably, and it was really tough. So I was sitting writing that early in the week, and one of our clients, the lovely Jeff Mountain, who I think we all know, sent me an article and he said, "Hi Eric, ignoring my WhatsApp." Yes, I am. Absolutely. Sent me an article and he said, "I think this will be right up your street." It was written by Greg Sattel, and Greg is a transformation change specialist. So I was halfway through writing this, or maybe just over a quarter of the way through writing this. I read Greg's article. The article was called "This is one simple scientific principle that explains why you shouldn't waste too much time trying to convince people." And he goes into so I'm sitting there reading this and I'm thinking, oh, this is fantastic. This is really, really good. He starts by saying experts have a lot of ideas about persuasion. Some suggest leveraging social proof to show that people have adopted the idea and have had a positive experience. Others emphasize the importance of building trust and using emotion rather than analytical arguments. Still, others insist on creating the unified value proposition. It's a fantastic article. So I started reading this. So I thought, right, I know what I'll do. I'll chop it up into bits and I'll give Greg credit and say, like what this guy's saying. But as I looked more into Greg's life and work in that transformation space, I thought this guy kind of knows what he's talking about persuasion. And he talks about shaping networks. One of the things that he says is instead of designing arguments, our time and effort would be much better spent working to craft cultures, weaving complex webs of influence that genuinely share values and share purpose and allow us to shape networks. Did you guys have a look at that, and what are your thoughts on all that idea of how modern persuasion works and how we do that?
Yeah, I read it and I was completely bowled over. And I don't know about you, Eric, but I found myself, or in fact all of you, I found myself myself going through it, sort of reading one point and going, right. I see now why when I do this, nobody listens.
Yeah.
And this one, I see now why I get drawn into fights all the time about this stuff. And then this one, yes, and now I see, and it was like repeatedly being hit in the face with a wet fish. It's like a real and it so resonated with me. So many of those different things are either things that I feel that we're really in agreement with, or things that it's as if the veil has been taken away.
Yeah.
Going, right now I get why when we go down this road, it's not as effective as when we arrive there by mistake.
Very good. Very good. Any other thoughts? Because, I've already, the cat is out of the box. See what I'm saying?
That'll be because of the nuclear radioactive fire.
It could very much be to do with that. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we had the guy here to tell us all about how he came up with this idea, the book Cascades, and also the one simple scientific principle that explains why you shouldn't waste too much time trying to convince people. Sounds counterintuitive, but we'd like to know more. So I think, Tim, if you, with the mastery of technology that you have, you could actually... There he is.
There he is.
He's just there.
Hi, Greg. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah. And
you're here.
Of
You're
course,
here.
Linwood.
Yeah,
I've been with Linwood for quite some time now. And it turns
you
out...
have. You guys have been away doing some other work together. I think you've done did you do a lovely podcast yesterday?
Yeah, and Linwood he went to law school with two friends of mine I grew up with.
Wow.
Yeah. I actually went to undergrad with one of them. So I've known Claire for absolutely long time.
Greg, we are super thrilled to have you with us today. We were all taken aback by your article. We loved it. And then when you sent us a little document, the 10 principles yesterday, we loved that even more. I guess what it'd be nice to do is just give our audience today a little flavour of how you got to this position in transformation and change, because you told me a lovely story about how this all started yesterday. Do you just want to introduce yourself and tell us how you got here?
Yeah, I'm Greg Sattel. I'm the author of Cascades and Mapping Innovation, and I help organizations to run transformational initiatives, because what so many organizations find that even with proven ideas, whether it's agile development or agile project management or design thinking or DEI increasingly is a huge one, gender intelligence. They know what to do and they know what works, but they can't get the organization to do it as a whole. And when you look at the statistics, 70, 80% of transformational projects fail, whether it's digital transformation or some other transformation. And that's obviously not good. I mean, you think of anything else that you would do and fail 70, 80% of the time, people would say, we really have a problem. Mm-hmm. But with transformation initiatives, what we find is when one fails, they just launch another one, right? Try again, right? And because we have this kind of cult of disruption, innovation, managers are kind of incentivized to show that they're running a transformational initiative. And the more they fail, the more likely they are to fail, because everybody's suffering from change fatigue. And the numbers were really bad about this even before COVID. And now what people say when they hear a new change initiative, it's probably going to fail like the last 10. So I'm just not going to pay much attention to it. Wait for this one to fail. And then it does. And once that's confirmed, it becomes harder and harder. So how did I come to this? As with most things, I was just minding my own business, running a organization in Kyiv, Ukraine, during the Orange Revolution. And it was one of those moments when the universe opens up and sort of gives you a glimpse of what it's really about. And what amazed me was that nobody with any conventional form of power had any ability to shape events in the least. There was just this mysterious force that nobody could describe, but nobody could deny, that was moving things along. And I remember thinking, I was running a large organization. I remember thinking, I'd like to bottle that force, but I had no idea how to do it. And I kind of packed it away. And a couple of years later, I'm in Silicon Valley. Everybody's talking about social media. And we had a large digital business. So I said, this is something I should really learn about. And that's what brought me to network science. And what I found from network science is there's a mathematical explanation for almost everything that happened during the Orange Revolution. And that mysterious force even has a name, and it's called a cascade. And that's how I got the name for my book. So that's what basically got us here.
Fantastic. And within that book, Cascades, which I haven't bought yet, but I will, you gave us 10 principles for transformational change. I think we've all read them, and we've seen, as Adam says, some sort of like thunk moments where we've gone, yeah, that's right, that's how that works. So it starts with number 1: revolutions don't begin with a slogan, they begin with a cause. I really like that. How did you what was your sort of reference point for that?
Just to be clear, those 10 principles, they're not actually in the book. They're I use them to summarize the book.
Right,
later on.
I got you. Okay,
So
cool.
They're in the book. I'm not sure each and every one is written, and there's really not written in a list like that in the book. So those 10 principles sort of summarize the book. But yeah, it gets back to this whole thing about how people overestimate their powers of persuasion. And usually in the, more in the abstract, because anybody who's ever been married or had kids, and Lenwood, we've talked about this, knows how difficult it can be to convince even a single person of a fairly basic thing. But people routinely think that they can just come up with a snappy slogan and convince dozens or hundreds or thousands or millions. And all of a sudden they're going to see the light. And all of these techniques you talked about in the beginning, using emotive language, social proof, having a value proposition, starting with a shared value. These are all effective and good things to do. Obviously, we want our language to be more persuasive and not less persuasive. But the fact is, the best indicator of things that we think and do are what the people around us think and do. That's where we get the whole concept of an inside joke. So, I mean, that's what an inside joke is, right?
Yeah.
So, unless we're actually thinking about networks, and shaping those networks, what we're going to do, we might be successful, for instance, convincing someone that Lenwood Ross, a really great guy. But once they go back into their into their networks that they're embedded on, and everybody's complaining about Lenwood, they're going to change their mind. I pick on Lenwood because I love Lenwood.
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't? Just a note to our audience: if you've got a question for Greg, well, we've got him. He's here at huge expense, and we'd like to get as much money's worth as possible. Please ask us a question. Before we go into an explanation on the article that caught our attention, any questions from you guys or any comments you want to make to Greg?
I just wanted to note where you said 70 to 80% of transformations fail. I worked for a Fortune 50 company for a while, and we never had one initiative fail. They just kind of died off on their own, but that never prevented us from rolling out the next one.
Yeah. Those numbers come from McKinsey and some other places, and they're usually based on surveys that I don't think anybody's going into organizations and ticking off the ones they fail.
No, they're certainly not.
Another failure.
There's some other statistics that are really interesting, and I'll read them off to you. So, Everett Rogers, the guy who came up with diffusion of innovations, he estimates that the tipping point for change is 10 to 25%, and that's in a system. And a woman named Erica Chenoweth, who teaches at Harvard Kennedy School, she says the threshold for a popular uprising is 3%. And Damon Santola at the University of Pennsylvania, he recently did studies that suggested that in an organization, the tipping point is 25%. So 25%. I don't put a lot of stock in these numbers, whether it's 10%. I think 10% to 25% seems sort of right to me. But what I think is interesting is nowhere has any data or study or anything suggested that the tipping point is anywhere near 51%.
Right.
But we go out and we try and convince everybody when we only need to get to maximum that 25% threshold. And then, 25 to 75, those are the sort of people in the middle. They're not really going to resist, once, if you can show that it's successful. So instead of focusing on transforming an entire organization or an entire market, start with the people who want it to happen and help them be successful. That's your goal, is to get to that significant minority tipping point, not to convince everybody. Because there's always going to be some people who aren't going to like the idea, and they're going to work to undermine it in ways that are dishonest and underhanded and deceptive. And once you internalize that, you can move forward. But until you internalize that, you're never going to succeed, because change doesn't fail on its own. In fact, it doesn't even really fail. It's actively sabotaged most of the time.
Actively sabotaged.
Actively sabotaged.
Yeah.
Once I started learning from Greg on this topic, and I've been learning, almost a year now on this topic, I started to see some of these things, and in some of the things that you guys were saying and we were seeing in our work about how the best way to get started with our transformation program is identify the people who want to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And, so I was seeing some of these things. And one of the things I thought was really, it took me a while to get my head around, because I was in this persuasion camp, was this idea that the sabotage is going to happen for irrational reasons, rational and irrational reasons. And we just we can't control that. So, Greg and I talked a lot about, manufacturing the majority, creating the situations where you'll have the majority, and using data to do that, which I think is, these are all different strategies that people who want to change their organization can use. These are practical things that they can use. I think they just need to have the knowledge and understanding the kind of fundamental things that are happening because of network. Right? All this stuff with networks, Greg, and I think you'd agree, is becoming more important because the economy is being digitized, and networks, the links that we have to one another are,
velocity is increased.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, velocity is
velocity is increasing because the networks, instead of being I don't know the right
they
way
were always there. We've seen these cascades for, we saw it in, Gandhi's time, right? They've been around, but speed is increased.
Right.
For
The
sure.
velocity is accelerating because we're connected through these
Those
social networks.
connections and those connections increase. We can build those connections and
Yeah.
reinforce them with greater speed. I want to go back to what Lenwood said before, which is absolutely right. You can always expand a majority out, but once you're in the minority, you're going to feel immediate pushback, and we've all felt that.
Yeah.
So, and Lenwood's absolutely right. Why don't you start with the majority?
Yeah.
I mean, that majority could be 3 people in a room of 5, but start with the majority and then work on expanding. Unfortunately, there's something about human nature that when we really believe in something passionately, we want to go and convince the people who absolutely hate the idea.
And brand them as an outcast when they're not excited about the thing.
Right. We want to try and find the sinners and convert them. And it's a real, I mean, when you think about it, to stop doing that, it's almost scary, because if we love the idea and we believe in it, why wouldn't we want others to embrace it? And this idea that
I think
they're not going to.
we're old enough and ugly enough to know that actually sometimes
Hey, speak for yourself.
there are learnings to be had, and one of the things that I was listening to, I was reading the thing that you shared, and one of the points on it is transformation fails because people oppose it, not because people don't understand it. And when you were just speaking a moment ago, you said about how people oppose it for underhand, disingenuous.
They will do it in ways that are underhanded and dishonest, and not only that, we all do it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say maybe they will. Maybe they will, or maybe they genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. So when we go into an organization, we're trying to subvert how an organization behaves because we know it's the right thing for them to do. They're trying to say that this traditional, and when I read that, I thought linked to the idea of the first point, revolutions don't begin with a slogan, they begin with a cause. And I thought, this is a marketing narrative. We're going to create a new logo and that will convince everybody we need to move to this product or service. And often we are at loggerheads with marketing because their view is that what we do undermines their role in an organization, which it doesn't. It just means their role needs to modernize. But they are defending that place, but also they believe that what they're doing is the right thing to do. So I think it's not always underhand. Sometimes it's, the end justifies the means, maybe.
What I think is really important to understand, because these people who are acting in the horrible, underhanded ways, they're us. We do that. We all do that. Because human beings form attachment to people, ideas, and things. And when they feel those attachments are threatened, they're going to lash out and act out in ways, and we've all done it. We can think of times and we think, why did I do that? It didn't even make any sense to me. And the reason is because that attachment is so deep and visceral. It isn't a rational reaction. And that's why the reaction is as strong as it is, because and that's why those people are so hard to convince. As Len would say, there are rational skeptics, and those we can convince with arguments, but there's always going to be that other group. The silver lining, and this is as important as the other end of the spectrum, and Lenwood can tell you about the spectrum of allies, but if you think about any great transformation throughout history, whether it was independence in India or civil rights, or my own experiences in the color revolutions, the transformation came about not because anybody was convinced, but because those who opposed it discredited themselves. Bull Connor wanted to show the world who he was. And Martin Luther King wanted to let him, and the world is better because of it. What's interesting is that through research by people like my friend Serja Popovic, we now know how to engineer that through something called a dilemma action, where you take a shared value or a widely held belief and you create a constructive act rooted in that shared value or widely held belief. Ideally, this would be something that is there's an element of surprise, and it's time for effect. But the idea is that it forces a dilemma where either choice is bad. Bull Connor had to either let Martin Luther King march unmolested, which would undermine his power as his authority as he saw it, or he had to attack them, and he chose the latter. Just recently, Merrick Garland, he took the shared value of transparency and he gave Trump's lawyers, he gave them a choice. They could either release the documents themselves, or they could fight the release in court. They had to do one or the other. Either one was a bad option. And that is how, and that's how you can actually leverage your opposition to your advantage, because that visceral, and I'll give you a more colloquial example. We've all been in that meeting that moved slowly towards a consensus. Mm-hmm. And then Lenwood has heard this example before. It's funny because everybody has experienced this. And then at the end, while you're sort of going towards next steps and action items, all of a sudden somebody who hadn't said a word the entire time throws a hissy fit in the middle of the conference room and completely discredits themselves. And everybody's like, where did that come from? Think about it. This is somebody who had an attachment that was being violated. Mm-hmm. It was, their objection was so deep, visceral, and emotional, they couldn't even give voice to it, which is why your irrational opposition doesn't voice the skepticism most of the time. Usually, if somebody's, immediately having objections, they're not your real problem. They were unable to voice a rational objection to this idea, whatever it was. And then they saw it was going through, and that was just last ditch effort. And they completely discredited themselves, and they were and almost ensured that the idea went through.
Greg, you're the whole concept of, well, not so much cascades. Well, I'm guessing it is until I read it. I'll prove that to myself. But certainly the article that you wrote this week, which caught our attention, instead of trying to shape opinions, we're better off shaping networks, right? That's what this is all about. There's a lovely in the little synopsis that you gave us, the little summary. In Survive Victory, there's a lovely thing. You're so right. We often forget about surviving victory. We won, now what do we do? You need to think about how to survive a victory from the start. It's not enough to make a point. You have to want to make a difference, which I think is pretty powerful. Pretty powerful stuff. We're gonna leave it there with you. We could. This is ridiculous having like someone like you on for half an hour, right? Because you could do it, Lenwood. Probably in an hour you didn't get enough, did you?
No. I could talk to Greg, once a week and just love it, really.
So we'll ask all of our
more than once a week.
Yeah. No more. We'll ask all of our lovely viewers today to please reach out. You can find him. That's exactly how you spell his name. And he's a lovely guy, and he will give you the time of day and more. But one thing I'm going to ask you to do, Greg, in case you were wondering, doesn't live with a reindeer in his house. He lives with, is it Coda?
Yes.
We need to see Coda, one of the most beautiful faces I have ever seen in my life.
He's
gone.
No, he came down, but he went.
Oh man!
But tell you what, Eric, I'll send you the picture with his. He's got it's his birthday outfit. He's got the little hat and the bow tie. It's pretty cool.
This dog is absolutely gorgeous, and it's unfortunately it's the people make a judgment about this dog and cross the street. And when they see him coming, but
he's 104 pounds of rock solid love and affection.
which is the name of my new autobiography coming out in November. Listen, Greg, an absolute pleasure. For everyone, please connect with them, extend the conversation. An absolute joy to spend time with
Thanks,
you.
Greg.
Cascades is the book.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having
man.
me, guys.
All the
Have a good
best.
day, Greg.
Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, Greg.
See
Bye.
you later.
Talk to you
Bye-bye.
soon. Bye.
Wasn't that great?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wasn't that great?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Greg is.
That was amazing, Eric.
You'll love Cascades. It's in part because it's central to what we do. The whole idea of networks and the science behind it, and the mathematical principles underlying, what's going on in our economy. It will be very eye-opening and fascinating, and you'll see more of Greg in the coming weeks.
In the article that you wrote, Eric, where you took some excerpts from some of what Greg had said,
Mhm.
and Greg spoke about maybe I think it was in Greg's article that you shared about the experimentation when people had to match something to another string of things, and it was really obvious what the correct answer was.
Yeah.
And as they went around the room, one person after another gave the same wrong answer, and then it reached the final person in the group, the only true subject, because everybody else was a plant. And then invariably, the true subject gave the wrong answer, even though they knew it was the wrong answer, because they didn't want to be out of step with everybody else. And when you extrapolate that to its logical conclusion, and you just go, that explains it all. That explains politics, that explains foreign policy, that explains business, that explains transformation, that explains change, that explains everything. And that is one of those cognitive biases of being a human, that actually we as salespeople and transformation people, we need to get inside that and understand how we can circumvent the problems that inevitably is going to create when we're trying to do a good job doing what we do.
Yeah. It explains so much, when you think about the work that many of us are doing, speaking to CMOs, right? So there's a group think about what attribution software can do and how you should go about marketing your business. And stepping outside of that group think, even though this is not working for my organization. We are not getting revenue from this, but you just keep doing it. And so, the thing about influencing networks and why that is so important for achieving transformation is just highlighted even more. You've got to build some sort of a circle of influence, right? And pull people into that circle of influence where they are in the minority, but then they can be persuaded as more people like them, right? And this is how you can build a movement across an industry or across a function.
Is that the term he uses? I think he said that you'd spoken. Is it co-optable resources?
I don't know if it's co-optable resources that we're talking about, but it's building a spectrum of allies.
Spectrum of allies.
A very good friend of mine developed. He's died now, unfortunately. Developed a fantastic business transformation program based on the teachings of Niccolo Machiavelli.
Wow.
And this is very Machiavellian, isn't it? The idea that you need to build those networks, and I mean that in a positive way. I'm not talking about nailing people to a sheet of wood in the square.
I'm not talking about the master of whispers from Game of Thrones.
No, but fundamentally, this idea that you have to build that network of influence and let them do the change for you is very kind of Machiavellian in terms of how he got traction in obviously in Venice in back in the day. And I think it's something that we can all learn from, isn't it?
There's a very bold statement in here, and I can't wait to get this book. Values represent costs and constraints. Bring meaning and credibility. A movement without values is nothing more than a mob.
Yeah, that was a very tough line, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we're doing for enterprises with the work that we're developing, and we'll start launching in the coming weeks and months, is how do you identify across the organization those people who are willing and ready to go along, right? And so that's for large enterprises and doing transformation. You need to, especially the one that we all advocate in terms of social media. You've got to identify the volunteers, the people who are already on your side first, bring them into a group, and then start to expand that majority from there.
Because they have networks, and their networks have networks, and it all starts to work magic, right?
So you've got
I did an interview with a Danish guy, and he what he did on my podcast, and what he talked about was kind of what the opposite thing of what Greg was talking about. So you're going to have a spectrum of people that are pro and against. And he said, when he was talking about that meeting, you're moving towards consensus. And what happens is that there's actually people that don't agree with that consensus, but they won't speak up.
Right.
And what this Danish guy has done, he's built they've got some analytical software. And what that does is that it analyzes the people that are for, but he says in most cases, the people that are for, you go, well, I know who I can go to because they've got a big network. Actually, what you'll find is that they're the people that are speaking, and it's the people that are not speaking who probably have a bigger network who will get more change. So it's if you see what it's the mirror image of what Greg said in terms of the consensus meeting.
Very good. Very good. So on this whole issue of evolving concepts of persuasion and shaping networks and all that, anybody got any examples of it in action, or examples of the antithesis, or anything that we want to?
There's a bank in London that announced that they were going to be a digital bank. And what they said is that what we're going to do is that we're going to build a separate bank, and that's going to be the digital bank. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the other bank, which is what we've got at the moment, and gradually one's going to go. The digital one's gradually going to go up, and the other one's gradually going to go down. What happens is that the digital bank usually are looking for a new leader about every 18 months. And the reason for that is that as soon as the digital bank gets contact with the other bank rejects it, just as much as you do with your body when it gets to a disease. So you can imagine what happens is that what they've announced is we're going to build this bank, and all you people over there are redundant.
Yeah.
So the other bank does everything that they can to stop the creation of the other of the digital bank. And it happened when Nest got bought by Google. What happened was that the moment that Nest got bought by Google, there was an announcement that Google was going to put ads on the Nest thermostats and everything like that. Right. And the Nest people said, there's no way we're going to do that. And then the Google people said, well, we're not going to help you if you're not going to help us. And so the whole thing was rejected. And so it's a thing that impacts on transformation, and it's a massive thing that impacts on things like mergers and acquisitions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In the return to work conversation, you'll recall that hybrid was really gaining steam, and this was really before people were going to be going back. You would have thought everybody in the world is going to be working remote. It's sunny days. It's all about the change, folks. It's going to be great. And then just for people, it was time to, things were going to open up. Jamie Dimon came out as being opposed to remote work. And this very preeminent, Jamie Dimon, for those who don't know, is the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, which is the largest bank in the world. And came out and said, we're not doing that. Everybody's got to come back in. Yeah. And that gave license to all those CEOs out there who were not saying anything, just waiting for the right time to say, no, our return to work policy is 5 days a week. Come on back. Now, the interesting thing about that is that people still resisted that mandate. And, obviously these organizations are not 100% back. And my question is, how much has social networks influenced the ability of people to resist? Right? Because right, other people, you're seeing stuff on social media, people are resisting it. It gives you more power, more strength, as the little guy to resist that CEO. So interesting stuff.
Hey, are you in the Resistance WhatsApp group? No. How do I get in?
You gotta have your resistance symbol.
Resistance symbol.
But joking aside, that absolutely is the case, isn't it? Before the days of social media, if somebody told you everybody is going back to work, well, your sample segment is the 20 people that you see in the bar every Thursday night. So you can't draw any conclusions. Now you've got an almost infinite number of people that you can see how they're behaving, and you're right. It gives you huge confidence that you're not the only one, because that's the fear, isn't it?
Fear is I'm the only one. I'm the guy that doesn't show up, and I'm the guy that gets canned.
I think it's like when people say. So I had a conversation. A punch up with somebody on Facebook about this, and I said, we need to pay more tax because the country needs more money to be able to do the services that it needs to do. And nobody minds paying more tax if everybody's paying more tax. Everybody minds paying more tax if they're the only one paying more tax. And I think that's the point, isn't it? If you think you're the only one that's in a particular situation, you feel understandably quite upset about that.
Yeah. Sarah shared an article. I wish I actually closed it this morning, which was really interesting. A woman in France who was talking about how Gen Z doesn't see, I think it's Gen Z, doesn't see a pop culture, a mass pop culture anymore. So you don't get the huge, well, I mean, you get every once in a while a Beyonce or whatever, something like that. But basically what she was saying is that because there is an ability to, no matter where you are in the world, go into community with your subculture, that's what you do. You don't kind of become part of some mass cultural moment because you can't access people who are like you or share your interests. And so Gen Z is doing that at a level that, those of us who, they're grown up in the world of social media. So, they immediately will gravitate towards their subculture and feel very connected to, thousands, 10,000, a community, global community that, is into the same stuff they're into.
Cool. Have we got any questions from the people that are still with us? Anything from Beth or Peter or James or Bob or anyone like that on the subject today, which was all about the concept of shaping networks rather than trying to, beat people over the head. That there are, as Greg said in his book and in his article, there are ways to do this, and he's proven it. In any transformation, it requires key stakeholders to guide it through with smaller groups to ensure it be completed into the bigger parts of the company. Yeah, absolutely, big time.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, 100%. I liked James Johnson's. I was gonna cut to it while Greg was here, but I ran out of time. Accepting there is a need to improve our future is not an indictment that we are failing today, and I think that's really important.
Yep.
It's we don't have to hit rock bottom to then go right. We need to change. We need to improve. We can actually improve even in the high times, right? We must always be willing to learn, adapt, and improve. Yeah, even that strange concept of once it's broken, we'll fix it. We're not It's not broken, but we need to fix it anyway because we need to be adaptive and thinking about the next thing and be aware of all the information and technology that's coming to keep ahead, right?
Yeah. What Greg talked about in terms of velocity, this is the key issue that everyone is facing, which is that the speed of, if you want to call it disruption or innovation or value creation in digital leading companies, they're moving so much faster. And compared to companies that have not adopted digital principles or are not as far along in their digital journey for whatever reason. And I think that if there's a downturn, coming out of this downturn, we could see a significant change, because what we've seen in past downturns is that the digital leading companies always come out red hot because they've kept investing in technology. They've kept investing in accelerating that velocity of value creation. So they come out of the downturn and everyone's like, whoa, they're farther ahead than these other companies. And I think that this recession is going to be unlike anything we've seen before, in part because of what we went through with COVID. So the investments that organizations make during this slowdown are, I think, for many companies going to be determinative.
You see, I think that there are two paths that companies can go down. One of them is that they can focus on the technology side of digital. So what they're looking for is increased efficiency, lower cost base, faster time to market, increased automation, all of those things. And I think that fundamentally that is not the route where value lies. So we're all familiar with Dunbar's number. It says the maximum number of stable relationships that you can have is about 150. And further to your point about velocity, Lenwood, in the olden days, so when we were kids, before there was digital as we know it today and social, the time for you to learn about something, a new band, a holiday destination, a party, was based on how well plugged in the 150 people in your network are. How many people have you got in your network now? You've got 100 times that. You've gone from 150 people in your network to 15,000 people in your network. So all of a sudden, those people pop up and down in your visibility based on what they're talking about and what your interests are at any one time. And I think that the businesses that are going to flourish are the businesses that focus on recognizing that the strength of digital is in developing and maintaining the networks, not in the tech. Because one of the things that I did in thinking about this was I looked at that Martech 5,000 chart, or the Martech 25,000 chart as it is now, whatever it is, where you look at each micro segment within the Martech industry, and there are literally thousands of products, all of which do the same thing. And the question that we posed at the very beginning was, why would somebody care? Well, the reality is they don't care. Because why would you care? It doesn't matter which one of these products you buy in reality. So what does matter? Well, what matters is relationships. Why do I want to work with you, Lenwood? Because I like you, because I want to work with you. So the more people I have like you in my network, the better opportunity I have to work with someone in a fulfilling and trusting environment. And the organizations that grasp this are the organizations that are going to exit this recession, because they will have swept up all of the people that have you don't have a loyalty to CRM A versus CRM B. You have a loyalty to the people that you have a relationship with, and focusing on that is going to be the key.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
I'm both worried and ready to be impressed, because I know that when Rob sits there quietly,
he's brewing. He's brewing.
Yeah, I know. I'm like wondering myself also, like what's going on over there.
He's done this before. He sat completely silent on the show and then just put the one thump in there.
Moving towards consensus. So, and then all of a sudden it speaks
I'd
up.
like to push back on that.
Look at Matt.
As I was reading Greg's notes about change, the observation that I had was, I don't know that I would even take change, I would take alternatives as a better. So I have Google Maps, Waze, Apple Maps, and I'll load in a destination and it will show me a primary route, but often it will show me several other routes. And it got me thinking about the time I was actually working on the financial planning for my church board. And myself and one other volunteer had vehement uh, oppositional beliefs in the direction we should go until we peeled back the layer a little bit. And we didn't. We wanted the same destination, but we believed different routes could get us there. And I took that and Greg's notes and extrapolated that maybe it's not even that we all agree on the same destination, but maybe some of those mapped out routes overlap for a stretch. And it's where that overlap happens that you start to build that consensus. And then maybe you both realize, hey, we didn't want to go to point A or point B. We wanted right there in something completely different. But let's find where we're driving together first and then go from there.
He's done it again, hasn't he?
That's a really interesting. Greg actually,
I've got a tear coming to mine.
Greg actually talks about that, and I think I can't recall whether he talks about it in this article or not, but he talks about differentiated versus shared values, right? And the passion is around the differentiated value. But what we need to do is we need to find the shared value. What is the thing that we share values on, and use that to move the change?
In the 10 principles, that's the one I circled, highlighted, and underlined. Shift from differentiating values to shared values. And that's really where my notes of Waze and Apple Maps and my discussion with my church colleague really just started pouring out.
But isn't the problem with that you just highlighted there, Rob, that you've got Google Maps, you've got Apple Maps, and you've got Waze loaded onto your phone, and you put the destination in on each of the three things, and then which one do you use for your sat nav? The one that tells you you're going to get there first. So actually, but I think that's a basic human behavior, isn't it? You know, you've got three options. You're going to take the quickest, easiest option. And actually, the reality is that in the journey from A to B, it's going to take you on the same route. Google Maps says it's going to take 3 minutes longer than Waze. You still load up Waze because it's 3 minutes. No,
Waze is honestly, I wanted to write a letter of complaint to Waze. Waze requires far too much of me as the driver, right? I don't want to be part of the team.
Still there. Is it still there?
Is it still there? Is the roadwork still there? I don't know. You tell me. I don't want to be part of the team. I don't want to be. I just want to drive, and you tell me where to go quickly.
Your car will report it back soon enough anyway. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there's an interesting thing that you have there when they give you the routes, where they tell you tolls. Or no, you guys, I don't know if you guys have toll roads, but we got roads here.
You invented toll roads. We had them in 1340.
This is the Queen's Road, and you must pay.
You'll pay a toll, sir. You'll pay a toll.
But you know, there is that person that says, I don't want to pay. My dad is that person. I'll go. I'll take another detour. I'll go the longer route because I don't want to pay. You know, I don't want to pay the toll, right? So those are the kinds of things that sometimes we don't know about.
Hey, listen, that's probably a nice place to end. I mean, we don't need to end completely on the hour. Thank you so much to our guest, Greg Sattel, today. Thanks to Tim,
Thanks,
Adam,
Greg.
Rob, and Lenwood for the contribution. And thank you to all your contributions to the... Yeah, Andrew's, Beth's, Bob's, Matt's of the world. Thank you for all your. Ian Gove is in there too, which is lovely. Yeah. Beth's great. Matt, yeah,
Andrew,
Mitch, everyone, all
Ian,
the
John.
Yeah, all the people. All the people with names. that
Thank
are
you,
over there.
guys.
Yes, all of them. All
And
of
the
them.
people with
Showing up
pet
every
names.
week. These
Even
guys are
LinkedIn
showing
user.
up.
Even LinkedIn user, yes, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. It's been a nice chat about a really interesting subject, and it was nice to have. Remember and check out Greg Sotell, his book Cascades. I'm going to order it today on Amazon, and be sure and connect with him as well. If you want to drop any of us a connection request, if you're here on someone else's account and you like the cut of our jib, please send us a little connection request. We'd love to have you as part of our networks, etc., and exchange that. So thank you so much for allowing me to host today, and I look forward to next week.
Thanks, Eric.
Great. Thanks,
Thanks,
Eric.
everybody.